Hi, this is Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, and I'm so delighted to welcome you to this live telephone town hall, but is also being broadcast here at NET Studios in Lincoln. So grateful for your willingness to spend a little bit of time with us this morning, and we have a particular focus and some very special guests. And our focus is going to be on Nebraska agriculture, American agriculture, and what we call Farm of the Future. And first, let me introduce my very close friend, the Congressman from Central Pennsylvania, Glenn G.T. Thompson, who is the ranking member of the House Agricultural Committee, a very, very important position because he is in charge of the vision of American agriculture as it translates into the Farm Bill, as it translates into policy. G.T. comes from a long background of dairy farmers, and he himself was a nursing home administrator and did a lot in rehabilitation and therapy, and is also a very good friend. I'm what's called the ranking member on the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture. So they make the policy, we look at the funds we have, and we try to fund those policies, but we have a great working relationship. And one of the gifts as well is that agriculture tends to transcend a lot of the divides in Washington. So people from both sides of the aisles work hard around one central idea: food, the importance of food, the meaning of food, and how it is essential to our well-being and security. With that said, I'm going to give you a moment, in just a moment, GT, to say hi to everyone, but I want to introduce everybody as well. President Ted Carter, President of University of Nebraska System, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really appreciated not only your extensive background that you bring to leadership here, nearly 40-year career in the Navy, Top Gun pilot, admiral, and last job superintendent of the Naval Academy. I hope you don't mind me remarking, you told me it wasn't so much being a superintendent of an academic environment that prepared you for this job. It was being an admiral on a mini city in charge of a fleet. That was the best preparation. But we're so grateful for your leadership and your willingness to be here today to talk about agriculture and its importance to the university system. Chancellor Ronnie Green, the 20th Chancellor of the university system. Dr. Ronnie Green has an extensive background in animal science and genetics and has received the most prestigious international award for research in this regard. We're really grateful as well for your leadership coming out of the ag community and, of course, shepherding our flagship system, part of the system here. So thank you, Dr. Greenberg. And Dr. Mike Boehm as well, who is Vice Chancellor. And Doc, I just don't know how to summarize it best, but you're everything plants and animals around here.
There we go.
Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, good. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you all so much. What we want to do today is focus as best we can on what we call the Farm of the Future, the alignment of public policy, as well as specialization that we have here at the University of Nebraska to really advance America's ideals around this most important part of our economy and our value system. Again, food. Nebraska has extensive agricultural production. It is the mainstay of our state. And really, agriculture is the mainstay of America. We take it for granted, but we have the lowest grocery prices in the world. We also have such massive amounts of production that we are able to share that overseas and export quite a bit of food to those who have food needs. And in fact, we produce so much that we are able to meet our charitable impulse as well and provide about $2 billion of food aid in addition to the trade that takes place. We have the most diverse array of foods as well. And for those with food insecurity issues, we also try to take care of that issue in Washington with important, robust programs. So GT, Congressman Glenn Thompson and I are both working hard on agricultural policy and funding the stabilization policies for farmers and ranchers, as well as for those with food insecurity, as well as protecting our food supply, making it safe, making it healthy and nutritious. And we also have responsibility for the safety of our drugs as well. Congressman, would you mind saying a few words to our Nebraska audience?
I'd be happy to. Honored to be here in Nebraska. Honored to be here with a good friend and a great colleague, Jeff Fortenberry. We work very closely together, and much of our focus really is on what was the original and today the number one industry I know in Nebraska and certainly in Pennsylvania, my home state, and this great nation, and that's agriculture. The original A committee. I mean, we're proud to work with an industry that is it's about at a very basic form access to high quality, affordable, and safe food. But it's more than that. It's about the rural economy. It's making sure that we're working towards a vision of, with the right policies, where we restore a robust rural economy. And as a secondary vision, my hope is we begin to repopulate some of these rural areas where our number one export has been our young people. We have great institutions of learning and education, where some are represented here today here in Nebraska. Certainly in my home state, my land-grant university, my alma mater, Penn State, we'll send our young folks off to get great education, and a lot of times they get exported. They go elsewhere, and it's time to reverse that trend, Jeff. And it's just a privilege to be able to work on agriculture with those visions in mind. And what a great industry. I mean, American agriculture is really defined, and always has been, by science, technology, and innovation, and productivity, the increase in efficiency, which has really been the key. The most efficient agriculture, whether we're talking our farmers, our ranchers, our foresters, anywhere in the world. The most recent statistic I looked at is our productivity of American agriculture has increased 287% since the 1940s. And that is just to everybody's benefit. So there's a lot of issues that we're facing as a nation. There's not too many that can't be overcome with science, technology, and innovation. And I would put the agriculture industry right at the forefront of those solutions. So proud to work with you. Proud to be here in Nebraska.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for your thoughtful words, and particularly visiting the issue of rural vitality as well. I think we all learned something during the harshness of this pandemic. It's what I call the digital leap, and the Congressman and I and many others are working to fill some holes in one of the foundational platforms by which we enhance what I call the ecosystem of livability. It's not just about being able to access the internet. It's about how it actually functions for the improvement of teleeducation, telework, telemedicine, precision agriculture, e-commerce. And all of those components are absolutely essential and actually create a new exciting vision for rural vitality in the future. So as harsh as the pandemic has been, Congress's policies are quickly catching up to enhance internet development, rural broadband, so that those outcomes can be an essential part of what we have traditionally called rural vitality. So with that, Mr. President, can I ask you to give a few words about the vision for the university right now and what you're seeing in terms of our ag development?
Well, Congressman Fortenberry, Congressman Thompson, it's really great to be with you here this morning and to be with Drs. Ronnie Green and Mike Boehm. For the audience, as Congressman introduced me, I've seen the world mostly from the flight deck of aircraft carriers for over 38 years. I commanded one. I've been at sea a good portion of my life. And what a privilege to come here to the central part of the United States. And as you both pointed out so well, I mean, this is where we feed the United States, we feed the world. For an institution that's 152 years old, one of the original land-grant universities here in the United States, it is such a pleasure to see what we are doing to educate our youth, to be the farmers of the future, to be the folks that are going to understand where precision technology meet the future needs of rural Nebraska. My perspective coming here to Nebraska for really one of the first times in my life as I came here as a university president just almost 2 years ago is how unique Nebraska is. There are 7 climate zones that represent all these different types of soils. It's almost like a full cross-section of the entire United States in one state. Yeah. 1 in 4 jobs here in Nebraska is in agriculture. 1/3 of the state's entire economy is tied to agriculture. So it really is the centerpiece of everything we do. For as great as we are as a university system, we have 4 campuses that cover rural Nebraska, metropolitan Omaha, our flagship here in Lincoln. There's no doubt that our roots are based on being a land-grant university, and we're really proud of that. And we're really proud about where we think we're going for the future of agriculture, trying to understand what the farm of the future will be. And I think that's going to be a lot of the discussion we'll have here this morning. So thank you both for that support and trust in us that we can deliver on that.
Yeah, perfect. Well said. Thank you again for your leadership. Chancellor Green, So happy that obviously you're in a leadership position of the flagship campus, but also your extensive agricultural background and sensitivities to what Congressman Thompson said, the alignment of science and technology and innovation. That's in your heart of hearts because that's where you started. Would you like to give us an overview of some of your work in this regard?
Well, you bet. Congressman Fortenberry, thanks for hosting this town hall this morning and being here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Congressman, we're very proud to have you here. I grew up down the valley from you a bit in the state of Virginia on a dairy operation and beef operation in my family, so milked a few cows as well. So glad to see you here and welcome to Nebraska. As President Carter said, we're a very proud land-grant university here. 152 years in our history where ag has been at the center of what we do, agricultural research, agricultural innovation, science and technology development, and interpretation and application of that out into the industries to make agriculture really thrive. Congressman, I'm really thankful for your leadership in realizing the need for further investment in agricultural science and technology. You mentioned it as well, Congressman Thompson. We're at a point where up until a few years ago, the U.S. led in this area for history. You mentioned the Economic Research Service data of 248% increase since 1948. To that point, 2007, we lost part of that advantage as other parts of the world really began to invest more and more in agricultural research and development, and we began to lag and to fall behind. So recognizing that and recognizing the need for those investments is critically important. As President Carter said, we have a very proud history here of being one of the leading land-grant universities, especially in the agricultural science and innovation space. I know you'll hear more about that from Mike here in a moment. The idea of and the opportunity to develop a new national center here around regenerative precision agriculture that we're developing in partnership with the USDA's Ag Research Service is exciting, needed. That investment we know is going to pay off for a long time to come. So welcome, Congressman. Welcome to Nebraska. We call it the middle of everywhere and everything in agriculture. And I know you're going to get an opportunity to see that while you're here.
Look forward to it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Green. I appreciated what you said about laying up, if you will, the on-ramp to the deeper discussion about precision and resilient and regenerative agriculture and some of the important work we're trying to do in partnership with the Agricultural Research Service, which is an important part of the United States Department of Agriculture, in developing this center, aligning all of the good work that you're doing now with a new vision, put more simply, farm of the future. So with that, Dr. Mike Boehm, would you like to give us a few comments about all things animal and plants, since you're in charge of that here?
I'll keep it tight there, Congressman Fortenberry. Congressman Thompson, thanks for being here. Excited to have you in Nebraska. There is no place like Nebraska. We say that all the time. When I listened to Chancellor Green and President Carter and drill down here a little bit, I heard, since 1940s, that push, Congressman, at how we've really made an impact. We think about post-World War II, the use of synthetic fertilizers. We think about hybrid corn varieties. We think about modern molecular biology techniques, proteomics, genomics, metabolomics. Today we're in the data space, so thinking about digital agriculture, thinking about how we deploy all of that in a way that brings climate-smart agriculture to bear, whether that's crop production, whether that's livestock production, food animal production. I would say, Congressman Fortenberry, to your point and to Chancellor Green's point on the National Center platform, it really does take a team. I'm very excited to be a part of the team here, very excited to represent and work with Nebraska's extremely innovative producers, our farmers, our ranchers, our processors, whether they're large or small, really focused on resilience, regenerative, precision agricultural practices that at the heart of it really think about producing the food, fuel, feed, and fiber for a growing world sustainably to include economic vitality of our ranchers, our farmers, our processors, but also of our small communities, and really making sure that we connect the interdependence between rural America and urban America, suburban America.
Yeah.
That's really what we're about here, and thank you for your amazing support. And I very much look forward to hearing the questions.
Dr. Boehm, thank you. That's so well said. And I'm glad Congressman Thompson got to hear you say it that way, because we talk a lot, and actually Secretary Vilsack and I have talked quite a bit about the very point that you just made, sustainability. And this is so critical for the well-being of the world, for environmental health, for soil health, for nutrition. And at the same time, it's got to be smart and effective so that it is authentically, truly sustainable, that creates a revenue model for the well-being of farmers, for the well-being of small communities, for the well-being of states. And that's the fullness of the definition of sustainability. And how do we get there? Through what we're doing, through science, innovation, and technology. One quick little anecdote, and this is a live telephone town call, so if any of you are interested in asking a question of us, go ahead and press 0 on your phone. I already have some Nebraskans who want to ask questions here, and we'll get to those in a moment. And if you can't stay with us, but want to leave me a message, go ahead and press 9 on your phone, and I'll be happy to review those as I do all messages that come into the office. So again, thank you for your willingness to spend a little time with us this morning. I'm Congressman Jeff Fortenberry with Congressman G.T. Thompson, the ranking member of the House Agricultural Committee, and the leadership team of the University of Nebraska, President Ted Carter, Chancellor Ronnie Green, and Vice Chancellor Mike Boehm. So again, you all are generous to give us a little bit of time this morning. Let's now go to questions. DeRoy has been on the line, and so we are going to... And by the way, I'm in command here. President Carter is laughing at me because he used to be a Top Gun pilot, so he has a little bit of sympathy while I navigate this technology. Hi, DeRoy, are you on the line?
Sure am.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Well, I can give you a little background. I am graduated from Ag College a long time ago, actually 1960. I've been a farm manager since 1962. So I still actively own my own company, and certainly I agree with all that has been said, but I'm concerned about a number of things, changes of this administration, particularly changing the stepped-up basis. If this happens, I managed farms in the 1960s when we had kind of the old system where people had to sell farms in order to pay the real estate, not the real estate, but the estate taxes. This is going to happen again. So if this stepped-up basis goes, the transfer of farms from one generation to the next is going to be extremely difficult. Of course, that's what the Biden administration is talking. We can have the best technology and everything in Nebraska, which we do, but there's going to be some real problems with that. Another thing that really worries me, we're looking at $400 for anhydrous, for example. Last year, it's going to be $700 next year. And if we go back to $3 a bushel corn, we can have the best Nebraska technique there is, but the farmers aren't going to be able to. It's not sustainable. So it's going to take $4 or better corn in order to make profit next year. And literally last year, the government payments, 2020 government payments amounted to about 40% of the net income of these farms, and I doubt if we'll see government payments like that. Of course, those were COVID payments, pretty much, which certainly was appreciated, and literally put the farmer and the farm owners in the black. But I'm not concerned. I think we've got the best technology and one of the best colleges in the nation, but these new potential things that's going to happen with this new administration could really, really be a tremendous, tremendous problem with agriculture.
DeRoy, thank you so much for your thoughtful viewpoints on all of this, and you are reflecting a lot of what we're hearing out of farm country, particularly on the stepped-up basis, is frightening people. And what that means basically is as land values have gone up, there's been a a way of practicing a tax law, if you will, that steps up the value of that land so that if there is a transfer of that land, you're not going back to the original land cost in the original sale, which creates huge tax liabilities, unworkable for most people. This is of serious concern. I don't know what the end result will be in terms of the negotiation on the final budgetary bills this year. I'm hopeful that all of that consideration will be out of there. Perhaps, Congressman Thompson, you can comment on that. The two other questions you had, though, regarding supply input increases, very serious problem. We're seeing that all over the country, not just in agriculture, and obviously that erodes the income potential. A lot of times supply inputs will increase, but when prices return back to the lower levels of normals, inputs don't return to lower levels of normalcy. Third point, right quick, and I'll let GT talk, is regarding the emergency monies that were used last year. Listen, I'm pretty sure Congressman Thompson voted for this. I did. The original emergency packages that we passed through Congress primarily focused on saving our healthcare system at the height of the COVID pandemic when there was a great deal of confusion as to how this was going to affect America. Secondly, helping individuals and families, including farmers. And third, small businesses. So this was a massive airlift to save America's economy and healthcare system and to help individuals. Yes, that was in effect a COVID payment. And you're right, the levels of support that are coming out of the federal level to sustain agriculture, we wish those could be lower and that these markets would work better. But this is the part of the reason that American agriculture has been so successful, that we have a long, almost 100-year history of stabilization policies that have been backed up by revenue in order to do one thing: make sure we have a stable and abundant food supply, again, which we take for granted. So, DeRoy, thank you for your leadership in this area. Maybe you want to address the stepped-up basis comment about what you're hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. We had, as the Agriculture Committee, we had significant concerns with what this would mean for for American agriculture, right? And so I reached across the Capitol, actually, to Senator John Boozman, a former colleague of ours from Arkansas, a former Bible study buddy as well, and Senator Boozman is now the ranking Republican on the Senate Agriculture Committee. And together, we sent a letter out to the Texas A&M, their Food and Policy Center, well known for doing very thoughtful economic analysis on proposals in the realm of rural America and agriculture. And we sent along two pieces of legislation which really framed what President Biden has proposed: the RISE Act, which deals with the tax, raising the tax, or the tax basis, and then the 95.5% Act, which really dealt with the question of capital gains and inheritance tax, or what I like to call the death tax. And they did their analysis. They looked at 100 farms from different regions, different commodities, different sizes, different climates, because people were struggling with weather, different places, right? And at the end of the day, what they found out, 98% of that study, when applied, 98% of those farms would see an average increase in taxes at the passing of a generation of $1.4 million. And that was the average. That was not the upper end. So the question, and by the way, the 2% that didn't see any tax increase, they don't own their own acreage. They rent. So they're kind of asset poor. It's not there to tax. So the question that we have to think about is, what part of a farm or a ranch do you sell in order to generate $1.4 million to buy your agriculture, your family farm or ranch back from the government, and still have a farm and ranch at the end of the day? It's a bad deal for American agriculture, and it's terrible for food security. Our farmers work and ranchers work so hard each and every day, and it's tough. I mean, look at the weather. I mean, there's no industry more sensitive to the weather. The inflationary cost that DeRoy brought up. Now, I want to point out, you're seeing inflation in your food when you go to purchase your meat, your milk, your eggs today. But just to let you know, the costs are going up, but our farmers and ranchers are getting none of that. It's the inflationary cost of energy and the workforce issues, incentivizing people not to work, and so it's important to understand that if you get upset and see that your food costs have gone up because of inflation, farmers and ranchers are not getting a piece of that in any way. So this is bad. I'm and I don't know what the future is, as you said, Jeff, in terms of where this fits in. Will this be a part of what gets shoved at us with this massive, what would amount to a $4.5 trillion infrastructure proposal? Right now, it's a part of it. I will say the work that we've done on the Agriculture Committee of asking for this great analysis so that we have good data, it's reliable, it's valid, it shows the negative consequences. It has slowed down the administration just a little bit. It's like sort of throwing grit in the gears of what they were doing with this.
I think it's a fair point. In the abstract, it might be easy to think of, well, let's just have another source of revenue here, but it is really an unfair form of taxation to not have this stepped up increase of the value of the land due to nothing that the farmer did for tax purposes, going back to original costs, which would create this massive amount of taxation in the event of a transfer, even to a family member. So it's grossly unfair. There's a lot of alarms going off on Capitol Hill in this regard. Again, the Secretary of Agriculture comes from Iowa, so he's intimately familiar with this. So I think that helps. But part of why we're doing this as well is that all of us need to tell the story of the importance of American agriculture and why that we have created these policies, including stepped up basis, to prevent this large scale, massive tax hit on a farm that has to transfer. It's simply to create enough stabilization in our system so that we don't have to worry about the ups and downs of food supply. A lot of times overseas, when you go to another country, you will want to meet with the president and the prime minister, but the agricultural minister is one of the most important positions in other countries because, again, there's not stability there in terms of agriculture production, and we enjoy that here. So great analysis. I'm glad to hear about the actual academic analysis that came out of A&M that would show the tax hit here. DeRoy, great question. Thanks so much. Did any of you want to comment on any of that? Or?
This is Ronnie Green as a private citizen, no, not as the chancellor of the University of Nebraska. I'm really glad to hear that you're on this because this is a real significant issue for Nebraskans across the board, including my own family. So
it's a threat to farm succession, isn't it? I mean,
that's the best way to put it, a threat to farm succession. Yeah. And part, again, of our stability in agriculture has been this continuity of succession and tradition.
I would just jump in there that this is so critical. When you think about 1900, 40% of Americans were directly tied to agriculture. 2000, less than 2%. So when you think about these incredible increases in productivity that feed a growing world, with the 20-fold decrease in the number of people engaged, this disconnect between where our food, our fuel, our feed, and our fiber come from, and what that means for our way of life, when you take a look around the world, you see what it could be. And I appreciate that you're minding the store and paying attention to this.
Yeah, we just need to tell this story very aggressively. Part of the reason we're doing this today. So we're going to go now to Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Barbara, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having my call.
Sure.
My question is about the GMOs. I have heard pros and cons on both sides, and I'm more against it than I am for it because I have heard that it does bad things to the crops as far as health-wise. And especially high fructose corn syrup. As I have diabetes, and I have read many articles on high fructose corn syrup, and our bodies does not. It says in these articles that our bodies do not know what to do with the high fructose corn syrup. That sugar is actually better than high fructose corn syrup because the corn has been GMO'd so much. The corn and the wheat and other agricultural products have been GMO'd, and there's just too much controversy on our health for the GMOs.
Okay, Barbara.
And a lot of
Well, look, I think we've got it, and I think you've asked the right people here because we have some of the top scientists in America who can address this question. I find it very interesting that you raised it. This tends to be a debate that happens a little bit more overseas, particularly in Europe, not as much here, but perhaps Dr. Green or Dr. Boehm would want to go a little bit more into the science.
I'm looking at the geneticist and the policy guy over there.
Barbara, thank you for the question. From a science viewpoint, entirely from a scientific viewpoint, genetic modification and use of GMO technology in crops or in any agricultural application is absolutely safe, has no safety impact on food or the system that it exists in, and the science would not support there being any concern with the safety of any product that is developed with has a genetic GMO basis for any of that production system. And I'll toss to Mike to add to that.
Yeah, I'll just bring it home to Nebraska. So if we think about Western sugar out in Gering, Scottsbluff, about 5% of the domestic sugar that you buy at the grocery store comes from Western sugar platforms. There is not a sugar beet plant in America that is planted that does not have genetic technology there for one purpose, to control root diseases, that without that modification, we could not produce sugar beets in this country. The sugar that is harvested from those beets is indistinguishable from sugar molecules from non-biotechnology, non-genetically modified plants. So it's that depth of understanding, I think, where we need to do a better job at land-grant universities and in partnership with others, is telling the story. Science is complex, and science literacy is absolutely at the center of helping demystify, debunk, and provide real information, just like the Texas A&M study. We need to have that information, and we need to be able to articulate it in a way that is not confusing. And so that's on us to do a better job.
Okay, great. Well said.
Congressman,
yes.
I might just add that Mike mentioned science and technology and the literacy in science. At the university currently, here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, we have just identified in the last 18 months strategic priorities for our investment in research and education to focus on in the university, and 4 of our 7 grand challenges, as we call them, that we've identified are in this space of water and food security, the importance of water and food security. One of those is science and technology literacy, as well. That this question really comes to.
I'm really happy Barbara brought it up, because I think it probably says to you all,
Absolutely.
okay, this is out there. Let's bring facts to it, address considerations that have been raised, people's realistic concerns,
Right.
and be in respectful dialogue about that.
Right.
But I might add just one other point here, and this is something I've come to really appreciate that's really pretty darn cool about the University of Nebraska. Nebraska is a big state. 90% plus of the land mass here is for farming and agriculture and ranches. How does the university in Lincoln and our Nebraska Innovation Center, where we do a lot of this research, a lot of this work, how do we get that information to the local farmer, big, small, or in the middle? And it's this idea of extension education that we have, which is really how we bring that science and that discussion. And some of it is the literacy that has to go out there. And what I'm really proud of what we do here in Nebraska is 75% of our farmers and ranchers use this information that comes from the university through this extension process. So, we are working hard to make sure that we're applying the right science, the right research to inform our farmers.
Yeah, great.
Jeff, I think that one of the things that of how we got to this, a lot of kind of a misunderstanding of genetic modification is the fact that we were not at the table We were not telling the story 15, 20, 30 years ago. And early on, there were some very scientifically flawed studies that first came out when probably about the time that the acronym GMO was actually named or coined by someone. And they just were inaccurate. They bad science, bad methodology, but they got legs. People, that became the foundation for questioning. And then finally, I do love the fact that we are at the table now on this. I think that, I'm pretty confident that as a result of genetic modification, there are at least 2 billion people alive in the world today that would have died from starvation. Mostly probably perhaps on the African continent, in India. And so this, God's gift of science has really been beneficial, and we have great stewards of it here at Nebraska and land-grant universities like Penn State. Got to get that plug in there. Great partnerships.
We love Penn State.
All over the country. Yeah.
Well, to your point, our neighbors in Iowa have a statue to Borlaug.
Norman Borlaug.
For
it says
that,
right on there.
And for that very reason.
That just
how
says,
many people could have been saved.
And probably since, that was a statue that went in since I've been elected, right?
Inside the Capitol.
Which is amazing because he passed away during the time of our service in Congress. And on the base of it, he's credited with saving 1 billion lives.
Right.
But the multiplier factor of that, it's got to be at least 2 billion today.
Yeah. So, great. All right, let's now go to Heath. Hi, Heath, are you on the line?
Actually, this is Jesse. It's his wife.
Oh, hi, Steffi. Good. Sorry, it says Heath here.
Even better.
That's okay. I was just listening to everything you guys were saying, and my husband actually works in this field. He is at a ag research facility. He does crop science stuff. He does, root research type of things, bug research. All that is his job. And so I totally understand what you're saying about how, forming the ag and research and technology areas is what's moving farming forward. My concern is he's been at this facility. This facility has been in place in Nebraska for 50 years. And within weeks of Biden announcing his 30 by 30 land grab, my husband found out that they're shutting down his job. And so, what is your plan for continuing to move forward with this research, having these research things happen if there are issues like, all of a sudden this place that's been in business for 50 years and all of these people who have made their jobs there as research, doing research for farming, for agriculture, now they're losing their jobs. And they haven't directly said it's because of what's happened with the Biden 30 for 30 plan, but it did happen within a matter of weeks of that being announced.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I hit disallow to speak by accident there. I'm sorry to cut you off. But I think we have the gist of what you're saying. So thank you very much for raising concerns. I'm in Washington. We sit on committees. I'm on, again, the Appropriations Committee, have special responsibilities for agriculture policy as well as state and foreign operations. I'm also a part of a caucus that is one of the larger ones in Congress called the International Conservation Caucus. And I'm hopeful that the whole idea of conservation and forwarding initiatives that creatively use public policy aren't commingled with understandable and legitimate considerations about federal government moving in and taking land in that regard, but them remaining as a part of the voluntary use or optional use of land for farmers, such as Conservation Reserve Program, CRP. One of the things that I'd like to do over time is look at how perhaps CRP could even be used more creatively. Obviously, that's an area where we pay farmers to put fragile land aside. And it has multiple objectives. Again, protecting fragile land. It's also a supply constraint mechanism by which we, again, hold down supply so that prices can remain high and we're not having to subsidize farm income as robustly. So it's been a creative tool to meet multiple objectives. So as we talk about conservation initiatives, I'm really hopeful we can get away from federal, the types of debate that's going on there about the potential for the federal government just grabbing more land, but the creative use and additional options for landowners that actually enhance conservation, environmental health, but also create revenue models for them.
Yeah, I have tremendous concerns about the 30 by 30 proposal. We have a lot of bellies to fill, right? There's a lot of nutritional needs here in Nebraska, across the country, and around the world that your farmers and ranchers are doing. And first of all, thank you to your husband. You know that his career he's been an agriculture innovator, and those are the kind of champions that really serve our agriculture industry. And so taking land, productive agriculture land, out of production in the name of climate, and that really is the motivating factor under this, is actually counterintuitive, because it's productive agriculture land that is the best for the environment and for the economy. And conservation programs that are integrated right within within agriculture or production agriculture are the best. Cover crops, healthy soils, precision agriculture. There's nothing that's better for the climate than the American farmer, rancher, and forester. And so I've tremendous concerns about taking, now obviously the CRP program where you have vulnerable, although I haven't seen so far a lot of steep side hills in Nebraska. We have a few of those in Pennsylvania that is just highly erodible, and
we have the Bohemian Alps right out here. I could show you some.
All right. But taking fertile, productive farmland out of production at a time where, the one thing that truly is growing in this world is the population.
Yeah.
And more people that are dependent upon food and nutrition. It's just wrong-minded. It's a wrong approach. Certainly doesn't. I actually believe that land that is taken out of production and set aside actually is more prone to be carbon emitters and not carbon sinks, just because of our technology today with agriculture and how we do things. But there's a statistic out there of natural land-based solutions that there's some published research on, and that's pretty much agriculture, including trees, because trees are a crop. That agriculture, or natural land solutions, as this study describes it, talks about how annually we sequester 6.1 gigatons of carbon annually. Now that's more carbon that's emitted on those agriculture lands, and it's sequestering an additional 10%. So the one study I read, which is, this is why I'm really so opposed of the set-asides of how they're being approached, at least right now, that the number one thing that we could do to reduce greenhouse gases around the world is for American farmers, ranchers, and foresters to produce more and export it overseas.
Yeah, interesting. Did any of you have any comments on that issue?
I'm going to take a little bit of a global perspective here, and as you pointed out, I've seen the world through, I've been around the world about 25 times on aircraft carriers, and I've been in a lot of Europe and a lot of Asia. Congressman, you pointed about the growing population. I mean, we're 7.8 billion in the world today, and we're going to be at 9.7 billion by the year 2050. So we are going to grow, and Nebraska is critical to filling that food security for that population. And I'm really proud of what we have done here. Now, our caller talked about her husband's job. I would say that we're going to be looking for where we can expand and do more research here. The grant that we're working with, thanks to both of you with the USDA, to create this national center here at Lincoln, is going to put us on a map on a whole different level. The words, regenerative, that word is really important to us here, and resilient, because we have had to deal with floods and drought. We've got to be smarter and better. Nebraska sits on top of one of the largest aquifers in the world, the Ogallala Aquifer, 38 feet from top to bottom, and the entire state sits on that. And the innovation of pivot to irrigate the state of Nebraska is one of the greatest inventions ever. So we have a history of being able to do this, but now we've got to get to this next level. We've got to be able to do more with less water, and that type of precision thinking is coming here in Nebraska thanks to some of the money that you're going to help us do and the work that these two gentlemen are going to do and bring the top PhDs And I would tell our caller, if your husband has a specific skill, stay tuned because we may be calling on him again.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm not familiar with the facility that you're referencing, and I know you didn't want to name it. I'm sorry about the difficulty that's being caused, but I think what you're hearing here is actually an attempt to align public policy, academic and scientific know-how to get to what we call realistic sustainability, which is good for the environment, enhances production, helps feed more people, better soil health and outcomes, better revenue to the farmer, enhanced rural livability. If all of these things align, that's smart public policy, and that's what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
Congressman, I might just want to underline something Congressman Thompson said a minute ago. The idea of sustainable intensification to address the needs that are there can't get lost in this conversation. Mm-hmm. You know, study after study has shown the impact of sustainable intensification on all across the board. You know, the benefits from that in meeting the food demand that is there, as well as protecting the environment, stewarding our resources as well. So I really was thankful to hear you say that.
Intensified sustainability.
Yeah, I would add to the caller and to her husband, workforce, especially in the agriculture sector, is a critical need in Nebraska. So please, mbame3@unl.edu, send me a note. Depending on needs, it's a network, and we need to be attentive, and we are at the university attentive to that. Secondly, this whole conversation, Congressman Fortenberry, nice job thinking about resilient, but regenerative. So the practices that we're using are actually regenerating and ensuring that our water, our consumption, the quality, the soil, the tilth of that soil, for what? For the next generation, so that we can do that. And then precision, to Barbara's call about genetic modified organisms or biotechnology in agriculture. That's part of the precision conversation. Digital agriculture, dialing in water use, absolutely. Smart technologies on implements, broadband, you mentioned that in rural America, but genetic technologies that allow us to dial in the full potential of our food animals and livestock and cropping systems is part of the Farm of the Future and the National Center. And so,
we are on the front end, the leading edge of the conservation movement by enhanced sustainability, enhanced opportunity, all aligning.
Yep.
And this is what, back to I think we were talking about scientific literacy earlier. If we can stay in this space of conversation, it actually creates exciting opportunity and vision. And a lot of times, again, this gets clouded by pronouncements coming out of Washington that might seem harsher and heavy-handed. And so, again, thank you all for unpacking this further. I appreciate it. Okay, let's now go to, Alan. Alan, are you on the line?
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
I'm a lifelong farmer. I'm a veteran. I served in the Army under NATO in northern Italy during the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia. So I've been around the world a little bit, and I wonder how American farmers are going to feel when they're farming for China under communist control in the very near future. Our false administration has emboldened and put down the U.S. and made us look weak. The Russians and Chinese and Iran and Islamic terrorist groups are all taking advantage of this and moving forward at tremendous rates of speed. We are so dependent on China now that how are we going to get these rare earth elements and stuff that we need for our technology and our computers and batteries for our electric cars and all, when we're giving the Chinese Afghanistan, which is rich in these rare earth elements and metals? by pulling out the way they are now under such horrid circumstances. My granddaughter is right now serving in Greece, missioning to these Afghan refugees, hearing their wailing and weeping for their families that are being destroyed by these Taliban people. How can this go on? And you're talking about conservation in the future. Yes, I am all for conservation and saving, but this is necessary now. Put your work where we belong. Put our rightful president in office. This is terrible. We aren't going to last to make up for these, to worry about these concerns that you're talking about.
Alan,
please address this situation.
Gladly. First of all, Alan, clearly you're speaking from the depth of your heart, and you're watching what's happening throughout the world, and you're grieved, as are so many of us in Washington. And I want to address a couple of things that you raised. First of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for your family's military service. And thank you for your service as an American farmer. Just something specific and narrow, and then I'll generalize to some broader comments about what you raised. Recently during the debate on the House Agricultural Appropriations Subcommittee bill, again, we fund the stabilization policies for farmers and ranchers and help those with food insecurity. An amendment came up that I was very supportive of. The Chinese government cannot own farmland in America, period. It was very simple. And the point that I raised, as I said, can an American farmer go buy farmland in China? Can an American corporation go farm in China? Could the American government potentially own land in China? Well, I wasn't sure of the answer, but the probability is probably as close to zero as you can get. So we have two very different systems, and a lot of unfair trading mechanisms that have gone on. And again, I'm editorializing a little bit here for my guests, but I want to speak to Alan's point. A long time ago, when China was given ascension into the World Trade Organization, the thinking was, way before we were in Congress, that if there is the opportunity to experience the liberalization of economic good, it will bring about a certain transformation of moral good in their society. In other words, respect for human rights, the types of system in which we expect here, shared power arrangements, a peaceful continuity of the transfer of power, economic systems that are based in justice and opportunity for all people. In China, it takes 5 years off your life if you live in Beijing because it's so polluted. The point being that the systems are very different. They have lax environmental laws, lax labor laws, and so it gives an unfair subsidy advantage, if you will, to manufacturing there. So in the lustful quest for profiteering, multinational companies park their manufacturing there. They make the stuff, we buy the stuff. China has the cash, we run up debt, they buy our debt. It's a very dysfunctional marriage. China's foreign policy has been basically three things: resource extraction around the world, predatory lending toward the poorer countries of the world, and payoff of authoritarian regimes. And you're wondering, how can they exist in the environment of a Taliban, if you will, and they've already cut their deal. It's simply that. They'll go in for resource extractions, don't impose any sort of moral requirement on their government for protecting human life and human persons, and that's the way they do business. To your point, I think there's a great awakening that's happened in America, and by the way, that amendment on the House Ag Appropriations Committee, and I'm in the minority, it passed. People do agree with this, that China must be held account. They're two very different systems. Their practices in many ways are unfair. We are very much linked to them, as you rightfully point out, and have developed certain dependencies. We have to develop our own capabilities to manufacture, mine rare earth, or get it from people who we can actually trust, and on and on and on with particular sensitive forms of manufacturing. So I'm going to leave it at that unless anybody else would like to comment upon this. One last comment, maybe Mr. President, I don't want to put you on the spot in this regard, but I do think it's related to your prior service in the Navy. We have to have a 21st century architecture for international stability that is rooted in the principle of everyone matters. No thing, no person should ever be thrown away. Number two is a build out of political and economic systems based upon that principle of human dignity and fairness to all. Without that, particularly with the miniaturization of weaponry that's occurring and the rapid expansion of technology, we are all going to be able to kill one another multiple times over equally. And then you have to ask yourself, and then what? How will our extraordinarily good and strong competitive advantage militarily survive in such an environment? That's a tougher question that involves diplomacy and the right types of international development that actually keep people, and the university is very involved in this, keep people away from twisted forms of nationalism because they have the ability to provide for themselves. They have enough food. They're demanding from their elected leaders one principle, justice. It's a bigger question than this town meeting, but I know you face this every day after you did your war fighting during the day. This is what you, I'm sure, put your head on the pillow at night and thought about.
Well, I appreciate you letting me make a comment here, and I won't try to retread some of the amazing comments that you just made, Congressman Fortenberry. But for our listener, I think what you said from your heart is what a lot of Americans are thinking right now. Certainly those that have served, since 9/11, have spent time either at sea or boots on the ground in Afghanistan or Iraq. But there is something that we should take a little more stock in. I mean, we just went to Chancellor Ronnie Green's graduation for UNL for the summer semester, as well as returning graduates from the 2020 year. And there is still something that we often forget, and that is this unique part of our American culture, the resolve that we have as Americans. It's not like anywhere else in the world. I've been to China. I've seen the youth of China. I've seen their service academies. We have something special here, and we should not give up on our next generation that are coming through our universities, through our high school. They're going to be the problem solvers. They're the ones who are going to inherit some of this mess that's being created. And I have great confidence in our youth. I see them. They get it. They are a similar generation of the generation that fought in World War II. They see things that are bigger than themselves, and they're ready. Yeah. So I am very excited. I'm hopeful, and I put great faith in our next generation that's coming up.
That's beautifully said. And obviously, you all are in administration and academia and research, but you're driven by one purpose, the education of students, the next generation. Yeah. Thanks for reminding us of that. I hope you don't mind if I repeat something that you said. In top-down controlled societies where everything is regimented and it's rules-based, that doesn't necessarily make the best soldier on the field, does it?
It does not.
Is that fair to say?
It's very fair to say. And I can tell you, having seen our youngest men and women on the flight deck of aircraft carriers and joint operations, they are thinkers. They don't just do something because they're given an order. They can solve a problem themselves. All they need is the right resources and the right direction. I've seen it time and time again. I have great faith in our American youth.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Alan. We appreciate your passion. I think we're going to have time for one more. If any of you had wanted to ask me a question and I don't get to it, unfortunately, we're coming up on the hour. Go ahead and press 9 on your phone and leave me a message, and I'll be happy to review that. And if we need to get back to you, we will. And before this is over, if any of you are interested in maybe studying agriculture or looking at ag opportunities, Mike, if you want to give out your private email in front of thousands of Nebraskans.
mbain3@unl.edu. We're looking for the change makers, the difference makers of the future.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dennis. Hi, Dennis. Are you on the line? Dennis, you there? All right. Sorry, Dennis. I'm going to try to grab the next person. Hi.
And I think they're giving you a chance to have the last word.
Yeah. Edmund, are you there? Edmund? Okay. Sorry about that. Stay with me, everyone. So what I am doing here is this is a control panel of the telephone town hall mechanisms, and I can see your name and see where you're from.
I think they may.
I think the mothership might be controlling.
Are we cut off now? Yeah. I'm sorry. I see. You were trying to send me a polite message. Like, wrap it up, Fortenberry. Well, good. I think we had a great discussion today. Thank you to all who have dialed in to ask questions, but so many of you stayed on the line to listen throughout. We have an extraordinary team here at the university. I want to really thank Congressman Thompson as well for his leadership in Congress. Again, he comes from a line of dairy farmers, and but I know this man's not only his intellect and leadership capabilities, but also his heart. He'll weigh into the most sensitive, difficult issues with principle, but also invitation. And I think that's a marked character of Nebraska. We've got political differences and different ideas and all that. But as long as we can keep that continuity of civic community really shepherded by institutions like the university, I think we can help lead America and help overcome some of these significant problems that are weighing on all of us. So again, thank you, President Carter, Dr. Green, Chancellor Green, Dr. Boehm, thank you, Congressman Thompson. Very generous of you to spend time with us.
My honor.
Congressman Thompson's going to go do a little farming tour out west and part of our state as well. So hope you enjoy your day.
Will do.
Thank you so much, everyone. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.